And good morning, friends. It's 8 o'clock, and we're at the intersection this morning. Um, and so glad we got some rain. Um, I don't know if anybody heard, exactly or near exactly how much we got earlier this week, but I know things are growing fast in my yard than they had been for a long time. It's hard to grow dirt, but the green is finally coming through. Oh, do we have any announcements today? Well, I'm going to
I
announce.
have
Go
I have
ahead,
an announcement.
Virginia.
Yes, this is Virginia Mahda with the Archdiocese, and we are planning, and actually, it's Father John, retired father from Little Flower Basilica. We are planning our first pilgrimage of hope for creation. This will be the first pilgrimage of hope for creation in this state, and so we'll have more details. We're still working out all the details. It's not just a pilgrimage for hope for creation, but also in honor of Pope Francis. So um, I hope that y'all can join us. We're going to be starting, I believe it's at 9 from Little Flower, and then on to San Fernando Cathedral, and then Confluence Park. So we'll get more details as we finish out the flyers and whatnot.
That's a beautiful pilgrimage, and I don't know if people have been to um, the Basilica, Little Flower. If you have not been, it's an amazing place. I'm guessing most people have been to San Fernando and Confluence Park. What a beautiful spot. That's shouldn't be the secret. It is. So we're trying to get it out there that it's not a secret. It's so beautiful. Do you have even a date on that, Virginia?
May 24th. It's right around the corner. So I'm on my other phone and I'm not in the office, so I don't have all the details with me. Um, hopefully I can provide, we'll definitely have more details by the end of the day and by the weekend.
Okay, but people can at least mark May
Yeah.
24th, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Two things to put on calendars, and these are both in June. But big things. So, get them on the calendar. And we've been sending them out. I know the Interfaith San Antonio Alliance has been sending out the information. And we've also been sending it out on the Tuesday news that we send out. On June 5th, 7 p.m. at the Whitley Center, Oblate, it will be the second annual Interfaith Summit. If you remember, we had a summit last year, and we've been working throughout this past year of moving this interfaith work as deeply as we can into community to keep this important stride moving forward. This will be the second one, again, June 5, 7 p.m., Whitley Center, Oblate, and it's going to be on compassion as the antidote to nationalism. Mayor Nuremberg is going to facilitate a panel of younger faith leaders and theologians that night and on that topic. The other date that I hope all of you mark is June 18th. It's a Wednesday, June 18th at 3 p.m. at San Fernando Cathedral will be the blessing of the new city council and mayor. It's a practice, a historical practice here in San Antonio with the cathedral at the center of our city. Um, our new council and mayor will receive a blessing. And if you've never been, I highly encourage you to attend, and I hope to see you there. I think we might have time for one more announcement. Any other announcements that come to mind? David has his hand up.
Yes, sorry about that. Good morning, everyone. This coming up weekend, I should have actually made this announcement last week, but this coming up weekend, we've got a couple of great functions that is taking place over at Greater Corinth Baptist Church on the east side. We have a program called Breathe that is going to raise mental health awareness summit for primarily for youth and women. This coming up weekend, there will be a lot of workshops, free food. It will be taking place right on Greater Corinth's campus. And right after that mental health awareness summit, we have a monthly program called the Mercadito, or in English translation, is called the Little Market, where we have produce that is provided by one of our partners, the Daily Bread Ministries, that will provide fresh produce. A lot of these produce that we receive are really from the farm, that is brought onto our campus, and we have quite a bit that we provide for people that are in attendance, and or if they need any type of fresh produce. Some and there are some dry goods also. So that's this weekend. The summit, the Mental Health Awareness Summit, is from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And then from 3 to 5 for those couple hours, we have produce that we also provide. And there's also a clothing facility, a clothing, it's not really a pantry, but it's a clothing which is accessible to a lot of the members that are there. And then, of course, a couple blocks up from Greater Corinth, there is kind of a homeless encampment where we do have quite a few of our brothers and sisters that come from there on site to receive clothing. But there's, really good clothes that's also available for a lot of people if there's a need for it.
Sounds like a great model too, David, in terms
Mhm.
of if congregations or organizations, are thinking about doing something around mental health and haven't, or to even just come and look at the model and how that works and how it could be replicated in other like congregational or neighborhood settings. So thanks for doing that. If you could put that information into chat, like the address and times again, that might be really helpful. So, before I start, I don't know what's been happening in everyone's life with the transitions that we've all been going through on a national level and also in terms of our like local elections. We're in very much a transitional time, kind of a long one. Sometimes transitions don't, this one's been going on a little bit. And for the women among us who've had children, babies, the transition time is it's a moment between labor and birth. There's this transition that you wish would move faster, and for some women it moves really fast, and for some not so much. So just kind of wanted to take a deep breath with all of you, and when there are times of transition, breathing is really important. Keeping centered and our feet on the ground, our heads clear. I think our world demands it, that those of us who are able to do so, that we do that. Um, so just invite you to a moment of centeredness that we come together every week on Thursday morning. I know for me, it's a time to breathe with community. Um, it helps us to remember, to put ourselves back together. So thank you for being that in San Antonio and on a personal note to be that for me. So thank you. Elizabeth Coffee could not be with us this morning and to go into our next resource. And for a while I was, like, what am I going to do? How am I going to do this? And I thought, well, this is a perfect opportunity for us to actually try out the resources on our own. This particular video that they've put together is the shortest one. And so we're also going to look at the reflection guide and experience it. I don't know, has anybody out there used any of these videos in your setting yet? Maybe you could raise your hand. That's what these are made for, that we can go, and even the recordings from at the intersection, they're done so that we can take those out into community and use them ourselves. So we're going to model this morning the intent, and we're going to do that together. So what we're going to be watching today are the lions we live and die by. And I got it all as about as prompted as I can get
Oh, thank
to
you.
find it. All right, does everybody see that on my screen? Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I simply, to go and find all this, I mean, you can remember the address, but I Googled. I pretended like I didn't know where I was headed. And I know that it falls under Know Your Neighbor. So I Googled Know Your Neighbor, San Antonio. And so the Know the Neighbor is knowyourneighbor.com. And I went to this website and then went to resources. And the one that I was looking for, the lines we live and die by. And so I'm already there. And when you scroll down, you'll see both the video resource, which we're going to watch. You see, this one's not even 2 minutes. And then below that is the reflection guide that you can download and utilize. And we're going to look at that in a little bit, but pretty easy to find and use. So we're going to first watch the video. Let's hope I've got everything optimized.
I'm Dr. Lisa Ochoa, and as a vascular surgeon, I work to save and improve people's lives by making sure their blood flows as it should. Medical training teaches us to focus on individual risk factors, which put you at risk for having heart attacks, stroke, or complications with diabetes. But early in my practice in San Antonio, I noticed another major factor: location. On the north side, patients were typically diagnosed early, and we could be preventative. When I started working on the south side of San Antonio, I was seeing younger and younger patients suffering from diabetic amputations, and these complications were preventable. Seen from above, a pattern emerges. Medical care is concentrated on the north side, while the south side faces a healthcare desert. This is further complicated by high rates of uninsured patients and economic challenges that make maintaining a healthy life exponentially harder. And I asked myself why. And that's when I realized that the social determinants of health, your zip code that you live in, dictates your health outcomes even more so than the direct care that you get. These disparities trace back to San Antonio's early years. I started looking at the maps of redlining that were used to deny mortgages to Black and brown families and comparing them to today's maps of diabetic amputation rates, and it's eerie how similar they are. I wanted to bridge this divide, so I launched the SAFE Clinic in South San Antonio with 8 satellite clinics in the most impacted zip codes. This is a way to connect patients not only to medical care, but to the things that they need in their community. And we have a bigger goal of community impact, and it'll take collaboration from everyone committed to positive change.
So you can see in that particular video, it's not very long, right? And I do know that there are efforts and have been efforts for quite some time and getting more clinics, more health provisions down into other areas of the city. Before we look at the guide, I was wondering if anyone, I know Peter Onfray was on here. Um, Peter, are you with us? I'm just wondering if any folks,
Yes.
yes, are you familiar with any of this work that's happening?
Yes, Anna, I am, and good morning, everyone. Yes, it's obviously that video very short but very to the point, and the work that Dr. Ochoa is doing is incredible. And when I met her, she was talking through her work, and we had started the resiliency work on the southwest part of the city as well. And we were talking about resiliency hubs, and as she's continuing to build that work out, the councilwoman in this most recent budget had requested $600,000 to go toward an entity that would address the health disparities in the southern sector. And it was approved, and they had the first meeting about a month ago. From what I understand, I know a couple of the committee members. And so that work's begun of really addressing how do we prioritize. And we lost the hospital. the one hospital on the southwest sector. And so that, of course, made it even more pressing that we focus on how do we turn the tide on the lack of resources there. And the on the horizon, we have, of course, university community community health is building the hospital on the by Palo Alto, and so that's going to be coming up here, and so that's a, a big move toward addressing having a facility there. But I think the work that she's doing with this entity, and she's a part of that, is how do we create those centers within the community, and I'm looking forward to that work that we're doing already and building the connections and those facilities that are available where we can have more satellites there where people can come and get direct access to that, and the educational, the food deserts, all those things that we're all working on, all those different components are tying together. So I'm looking forward to how that's going to really play out. And it's early in its stages, called Chest. That's the name of the entity. And so really good stuff. It's a lot of hard work on the ground, of course, in education and access and back to when the work that we've been doing, and I really appreciate these meetings that we have on Thursday. I mean, like you said, they're like breath to me. They encourage me. I get inspired to see what everyone is doing, and and I've seen that in the Quintana community. I keep going back to that because that's where I live. That's where I see how this work has started to the synergy and the work of community working together, and the connectivity, and then the funds. And right now, knowing that the resources are so thin, right? And so we have to really work together and prioritize how we pull down the funds that are available, and we get creative in being able to do that work. And I see that opportunity to still not to despair, because it looks like there's not the funding is going to get thinner, but knowing that there's people that are dedicated to work, and because we're faith-based, we have the faith to believe God's going to work out a way for us to meet those needs. So I'm excited about the work that we're doing, and Dr. Ochoa, she's just a champion.
Mhm. So I think it's pretty easy for all of, thank you, Peter. By the way, I put Peter on the spot. He had no idea that I was going
Mhm.
to ask. But I think quickly, like right now, we can see what one of these resources, this short video, and we're going to go look at the discussion guide in a minute, but what it can do in terms of helping things to move forward, right? And and when we look at the maps that we saw on the video as well, having more health resources in other areas of town, that's not up to people who are just living in those areas of town. We've been trying in these last years to work together holistically across the entire geography. And so places that have gaps need others working with them to strengthen it. But even utilizing this resource to help better educate people on the ground, and so that there's more of a groundswell to mend and heal us on a larger scale. So I'm going to go now to the discussion guide, which was on the same page as that video on the same web page. And you can download it, and that's what I've done. I've got it on screen, and there's the doctor. And we'll see within this discussion guide, what could you do with 20 years? Could you build a career? Save up to buy a house? What could you learn and do? So it takes you through story, the discussion guide. And of course, if you wanted to, you could print copies and, hand them out. I would think, although I'm also very aware of our environment, but having hard copies in people's hands to carry home with them will help them further down the road to continue to remember and grow in knowledge and hopefully wisdom, and then into some civic engagement towards change. So if you do remember too, the first video I think that we looked at was about redlining, the whole process itself. And so that's, as we know, pulled into this particular conversation. So there's a reminder of that during the Great Depression. And then they have reflection points. So if you have like adult forums or team meetings, um, in your where you work or neighborhood associations, sometimes those folks are looking for, a program for the evening. This could be one of those. But so here's a reflection. Think about your neighborhood. What kind of places do you have in your neighborhood? What things do you have to leave your neighborhood to find? How do you get to those things? Do you walk, drive, take the bus? How long does it take to get there? And then the Making San Antonio is the video that's on the redlining. And so they're recommending here then to you could watch that and go even deeper then into redlining. Because this video doesn't go as much into it, it connects with it. And then it retells Dr. Ochoa's story. So maybe we can even talk about this. How far do you have to travel to find a doctor, a hospital? What about a dentist, eye doctor, or therapist? And then it goes back again to Dr. Ochoa. So I want to go ahead and just kind of open it up. And maybe we can even use like our hands or polling. Um, my doctor, about a year ago, I started to have some heart problems. I'm getting that age. And I found heart doctor, cardiologist, highly recommended, that wasn't far from where I lived. And I'm like, well, that's not so bad. It's a like 10 or 15-minute drive. And mid-year, he decided to move out to the medical center. And, I was like, but I don't want to drive to the medical center. And I have the capacity to do it. But um, it was a very interesting dynamic for me. I have the means to be able to get there, but like all of us, we're all getting older every day. We have this in common. But I just didn't want to drive there. I don't really enjoy driving in the medical center. I'm giving all and I'm grateful that we have a medical center. So I'm just curious. We might use like minutes here. Okay, we'll use minutes. So, and using our raising hand thing, right? How many of us, the doctor we go to the most, right? Whichever doctor that is, pick that doctor in your head. How many of us can get to that doctor in 10 minutes? I think I've got two hands, three. How about, there's a four. How about, let's just double that. How about 20 minutes? So take your hands down. So more. How about 30 minutes? Yeah, I would add mine to the 30 minutes or more, you know. Hmm. So, and I'm wondering is that everybody probably, I'm making a huge assumption here, but everyone is able to get there more or less on their own, not walking or that's one of the beautiful things I think too, though, about sacred.org. When you're looking for things, right? You can look by zip code and at least try to get what you're looking for as close to your house as possible, right? Maybe, hopefully, that you can walk to it or, something close enough. And so that's a tool that we didn't, have a half a dozen years ago. Um, when my last, you know, doctor actually quit doctoring during the pandemic, just decided that they didn't want to do that anymore, right? It took me almost 2 years to find just another regular old doctor. And I asked lots of people, right? I want to open it up for a conversation. I mean, if there are any thoughts that you're having right now about the health disparities, and those maps were so informative. I don't know, they're startling when it comes to information. Virginia, Billy,
Well,
thoughts?
yeah, I mean, it just reminds me so much of the maps that I had shared too on because it's not just health, it's also so many things in income and education, but it's all connected. Um, and I feel like we just need to find a way to get to that root of the problem. And I really believe that it's going to require that conscious racing of redlining and sharing these videos. I really love that video that you shared, and so I plan to share that with my ministry and other folks. It's a really great video, and that's the way to start, I believe, because we just have too many things going on, and we're addressing a lot of symptoms of a real problem that exists, and I feel like we need to get to the root.
Yeah. Um, Billy, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I saw this in exaggerated form when I went out to Bandera County, and they had a coalition pulling together of their local resources. And for them to get medical care, they've got to go to they got to drive 3 hours, 4 hours to get it. And so it really puts a focus on what's the impact of that, what's the cause of that. And so they have homeless encampments outside town. Those people just don't get medical care at all. Period. And so you see the effects on the children and the adults there. And we can see that in our own city and the parts of town that have been redlined. We tend to think, well, but there's a bus system and they can get to it. Well, maybe. But boy, talk about having it in your face out in Bandera County. It just really hurts.
Yeah, it also makes me think about, and in a couple of weeks, we're going to have an intersection on street medicine. But doctors used to always travel two people way back when, right? Way back in the day, as it said. And then it went into, this large healthcare system that we have into centralized locations. And, now we're seeing again and have been for a while, but medicine going back out into, the world where it can reach two people. David, your hand's up.
Yes, I'm so glad that we're on this particular topic because when we take a look at, communities within our communities, a lot of the elders and that cradle of wisdom that we need within our communities is from our seniors or what we deemed, as seniors. And to be able to pass that wisdom down to, the younger generation, the generation, after them, we need our seniors to be present. And for that to occur, proactive medical examinations and proactive medical care is something that we do need to have. A lot of these locations where you have individuals that are 30, 40 minutes out, much like what Billy was talking about within Bandera, where you just don't receive that medical care. How oftentimes do we see individuals living in their 80s into their 90s? To be able to pass down that wisdom to the younger generation. You just don't have that. So to hear, Dr. Reverend Ann, you speak about that there's this movement or kind of maybe a paradigm shift that is taking place where doctors are and or even nurse practitioners are going out into the streets to provide that medical care. I hope it does catch on fire, that we do find ways within social media to make that become viral so that we'd be in a better position as a community.
Yeah, we might even, we have mental health first aid and mental health 101. It might be that time where again, but first aid and basic medical care being taught more out in the community as well. It's 8:29, and so I want to honor everybody's time. We'll keep talking for those who want to, but next week we'll see the last of the four that's available from HEB Foundation. It's called Surviving the City: The Realities of Families Facing the Benefits Cliff. So I hope you will come for that. I also want to remind all of us that education goes every direction and is helpful. And one of the things that has become very obvious in the work that I've done that with the city is that, I do education like this into, community, but I've also got to be doing education into the governmental system. And even like if we think hierarchies, even into the hierarchy. So when, for example, when San Antonio became a compassionate city in 2017, the first folks who went through the compassion education, other than a small team to help teach and train and educate, were council offices, and the mayor's office was the first one. So we all know the role of education. So we're going to keep doing that. I think that's what the intersection has become. Um, and I think my next question, even if this group is, so what could we all do together around health disparities and where healthcare is in our city? How can we strengthen those efforts? So I want to open up the conversation to that. If we have any thoughts, I did notice when I was reading through it was the essay report, I think, where they kind of highlighted all the candidates who were actually voted in to council in the runoffs and everything. But Peter mentioned CHEST, trying to get that health care into the south and southwestern part of the city, that's going to continue with that new council person. So even being aware of that can just one thing can make a difference. I bet Peter's got an idea, and that's why his hand went up. Peter, do you need some help?
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
can we
No,
help?
no, thanks, Anne. And you prompted something with that thought about what can we do, and what I see happening right now. I had a really great meeting with Leah Powell of LIS, and LIS is an entity that supports building capacity for nonprofits, small businesses, and they're the conversation really went to how do we empower those that are on the ground, and then the linking and the leveraging in those communities. And I think that's in each one of our spheres, we have that opportunity to not only be doing the work, but linking and leveraging, just like you just shared, Anne, about how you're communicating back to us, but you're also taking what you have and you're taking it back up into the hierarchy. And I think that linking and leveraging really creates that synergy. And I'm seeing it in spades in the community right now, in the community that I'm working in, and how these different departments, and I've been blessed. Now, I will share, I kind of pulled away for a little bit from some of the more specific sustainability work I was doing. I got accepted to the Revitalized SA Leadership Corridor Program. And so it's an 8-month program that the Department of Economic Development has provided. And there's 14 cohorts in Quintana. I'm the second phase of Quintana. And so it's been just a blessing for me to be able to connect with these other cohorts and how we're linking and leveraging our work together now at that level for economic development. But it's so holistic. Like Virginia said, it's not just the health disparities, but it's everything. It's a holistic system that needs to be addressed. So approaching it that way, and Office of Sustainability is making investments in the community. Now we have economic development making investments, and then we have chess coming in. I mean, from different perspectives, the resources are, but bringing them into the community, resiliency hubs. I know we wear the word out, but in a very practical way, setting up those, and we're looking at Athens still as a place where we can create, much like in, maybe we can have Miss Mary Gar from um, the neighborhood place. I know she's with
Yeah.
I forget the organization that's doing the work there, but that model there, I'm really looking at that model, and I've spoken to her about it at the Pathways to Hope conference last year. We talked about it. How could we replicate that in some form, but make it very organic to the Southwest community? That as we stand something up, as much as they did on the West Side. I mean, it's an excellent model of how they have all these resources there of developing people, and it's easy access. You can get to it. And like even with sacred.org, I heard of, well, let's move those into libraries. And libraries are great, but there aren't very many libraries in that community there. But where you can have more resources beyond just the library and sacred.org access directly, but you can have a place where you've got the health and you've got the economic development, you've got education, you've got all those components, and then of course sustainability and all those other departments that come into play. Um, I'm really seeing that as part of the solution is those resiliency hubs in community, and then of course disaster management. You know, preparedness, that's part of resiliency. Being prepared is how fast are you going to recover, and that's all. That's 365, 24/7. And when the disaster comes, we can recover quicker. So I'm really hanging my hat on that, those resiliency hubs, but it's the work building them and with the linking and the leveraging, knowing that funds are limited, but yet we can still prioritize them and make them part of the solution. So that's a long-winded response, but just needed to get that off my chest. Hmm.
Peter, could you just make a list in the chat of the different organizations that you mentioned so that people can get those in their heads? And Mary Gar would be an excellent person to have come to the intersection. So, David, your
Will
hand's
do.
up. Thanks, Peter.
Yes, and in being additive to what Peter just spoke about, I sit on the board with Methodist Healthcare Ministries Community Council, and one of the things that we have, started to collaborate and really started to look at creating a blueprint is we know that in a lot of underserved and marginalized communities, one of the central hubs of those organizations are the churches. So we took a look at and asked the question: is there some viability of having, whether it be a Wesley nurse, which is what MHM really trains a lot of their nurses on, or could we even have some intern nurses that could be stationed within churches that'll provide that kind of that proactive education, mental health education, preventative education, to just do a, much like back in the days when you had family doctors. They weren't specialists, they're more internists. They provide that look over and then say, hey, this little bump you have, you're going to need to go to the hospital. I would recommend that you go to the hospital. So they really start to provide some of that proactive care to the congregants of the churches and or individuals that would come into those church environments, since we do have a church with some, level of, not frequency, but some level of almost on every corner. It just made sense. And that is an alternative that we're taking a look at. I would really love to link up with Peter to see how MHM can fund something that he was, speaking about. That is, I think, an opportunity that we could make happen. But yeah, that I know that MHM has an initiative. Again, their motto is, trying to serve for the humanity, trying to serve God, for humanity. And I think that everything is right now just swirling and aligning, and it's starting to come down to that little, point where everything will align well.
Yeah, in other like denominations, Lutherans have parish nurses, and it dots connect. And I grew up in a very small rural area, and the first small person I knew, who was the same age as myself, Mary, we grew up together, went to Sunday school at two, and graduated together on the same stage, and all those things. She became a nurse, and it ended up being a county health nurse. But in that community of 300, when I had heard about parish nursing, I told Mary, I said, have you ever heard about parish nurses in the Lutheran church? And we grew up, in that Lutheran church together, and she hadn't. And right up until my mother died, Mary was her parish nurse. And she would go from house to house in that little community of about 300. But what Mary did, that one step, like David's talking about, that kind of look over, right? and knowing when you needed to go to the doctor and when you could do it yourself or when you were trying to do it yourself and you shouldn't have been type of thing, you know. Um, Again, this is another direction, especially given kind of where things are today. So how can we go even deeper into home health care and um, within the home? Sam, and I think you'll be the last comment and question here.
All right. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. For about the last 2.5, almost 3 years, I've been working with a few organizations, United Way, Adrian Lopez from the Texas Workforce, the Omega Psi Phi from the East Side, which is the largest Black fraternity in the state of Texas, and I think in the nation. Um, Working with Compadre, and some other organizations. We're trying to establish what we're kind of deeming the Father Family Commission. And what my idea of doing is, like, I think last year or the last couple of years they've closed over like 20 schools in these marginalized communities, right? So my idea was to, okay, well, let's get all these, powerhouse organizations, and let's put them all, like I said, like, let's kind of replicate the neighborhood place. I've been talking about this for, like, say, like 3 years, and we can put, the San Antonio Father Campaign. We can put Methodist Health Ministries. We can put Texas Workforce. We can put UHS. We can put a Chrysalis in there. We can put, and not only that, but to have access to a cafeteria, an auditorium, a football field, a soccer field, a baseball field, and really turn these uh, schools into like an actual community hub where we can actually gather people in the community every single week to have access to these fields and stuff, to bring community back. I remember in the 70s when I was growing up, you know, uh, almost every school, and I grew up right here, like in the central San Antonio, because I went to Edison High School near Jeff. I remember every school, like even middle schools and high schools back then, everybody had a summer recreation, you know. And I remember we'd play shuffleboard, and we'd play against each other's, schools, and softball and kickball and dodgeball. And in today's society, we just lost all that. I mean, I'm always telling the guys in my classes, I live in an area here where there's like about six schools within about a 2 mile radius from my house. And I see school buses coming up and down every day when I'm walking my dogs and everything. Every day when I come home, there is like no kids in the street at all. I'm thinking, where are
Mm.
they? Back in my day, I mean, we were all running around, on skateboards and scooters, and just running on bikes, with sissy bar. I mean, we were all outside. Yeah, we really got to flip the switch. The community just, it has to be a massive, major, monumental, collective effort, and really bringing this all together. So I like what you're saying, David. If you don't mind, I'm working with Mike Mitchell, and Mr. Lopez from the president CEO, and some other guys from these organizations. If you'd like to come into this conversation, I'd definitely love for you to come into that. So anybody who can be a backer, anybody who can help, get us in the right doors, pull some strings, write us into a grant, whatever, so we can put this together and really start making it happen. I've been doing this now for 7 years, and the thing is that, even the other day we had an incredible symposium about resiliency, and we got to move. I think it's enough of the talking, I guess, as you can say, and actually get something done. Because I'm a doer, and I need doers with me. So anybody who wants to join, please give me a call. Thank you.
Yeah, it makes me think of we've got so many efforts going, right? And so, and the needs are right there, mental health and none of that, all these different like components, right? But what you're talking about, Sammy, and what we're talking about this morning is, how do we create community? Like where's that focus that brings many aspects together? And it reminds me, and we've had them before, but I think we should again, but the Goliad Community of Promise in a congregational space where very few people, are actually part of that congregation. But this is amazing um, resources that are there, a gymnasium, a full professional kitchen, it's right in the heart of a community in need. And how do we make that happen? And where are the efforts to make the, the community part, the big pulling together part? And I think at 8:45, I'm going to kind of leave it even as an invitation that Goliad Road Community Promise is an experiment to do exactly that. And we have expertise. And in fact, at the symposium that happened on Tuesday on resiliency, we had 6 people at a table that if those 6 people alone just took the pieces that they got and put them into Goliad Road in that experiment, it would make it happen. To invite who you're working with, Sammy, into that experiment, we could make it happen. And then once we make the neighborhood place, that was a school, right? Transformed into that. Well, we've got more and more congregational facilities that are empty spaces, green spaces, right? That we can do them there too. And community has to grow in proximity, right? It's there. Anyway, I'm going to leave it at that.
Can I
Sammy's
just
got his
mention
hand. Can't leave
one
it.
more thing?
One more
Just a
thing.
one real quick thing, and none of this can be done without having some type of a foundation or a cornerstone of some type of um, spiritual component, right? There has to be a place there where people can actually uh, even worship if need be, like in our campus on the 1616 at the American Indians, we have a wellness room. So if anybody's having a bad day, they can go and pray, meditate, burn incense or whatever. We should have those spaces available for people there for meditation and prayer and yoga and that type, because like I said, if we're going to have a community space, it should be the entire community, right, around these schools. And what a better place, right? Because nowadays, so I'm thinking to myself, okay, if all these schools close, how much money is the city losing? And not only that, but if nobody's taking care of these schools, kids are breaking into them, they're doing all sorts of crazy shit in there. It's going to cost the city money to fix them and to board them up and all stuff. Why don't they give them? Well, maybe not give them, but lend them to people like us that want to do something with them. It's nothing off. And then we get the people out there, and I'm sure there's millions of people out there. They got money and say, "Hey, man, you got something to do? Oh, hey, we'll give you some money to pay the rent and pay this and all this stuff, so that we can do our work." I mean, I'm all about doing the work, guys. I don't care who's there, as long as the people over there are going to be under the damn roof want to do it and get rid of the silos and all the other BS and just do the work, man. I just turned 62. I don't know how much more time I have in this game, but I'm all in, man, in this game you know and we just need to have the right people with the right heart and the right compassion and the love that are just going to tear this up, man, and really help people, man. We work with over 500 people a week in our classes, and sometimes, man, it kills me, it breaks my heart with all that's going on out there. And I know that there's resources out there, we have the people and the right people, just getting them the right people together and getting it done. So please, for the love of God, can we get something done? I'm gonna get off my soapbox. Thank you.
Amen. What a great ending for the love of God. Thank you all. And I will see you next week at the intersection with the benefits cliff and how we're surviving here. So, thank you all for being here. Paul, you're going to stay for a minute?
What a delight it is to hear Peter and Sam and David and the inspiration of their own struggles